Hello, and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. I am your host, James Jones, and it is February 15th, 2018. This is our 559th episode. And we're just going to get right into it with John Lindemann.
I mean, what's the episode number, though?
I just said it.
Oh, all right.
I literally just said it.
Well, that's... it.
That is literally the first thing I said before I threw it to you.
The episode number doesn't necessarily correspond to the number of episodes, but whatever.
I even like drew it out to emphasize that I knew what episode number it was.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
John,
you know, I'll...
John, what episode number is it? What episode number is it, John? Do you know?
I don't know. You're the expert.
John, isn't it weird how James really adheres to kind of like a strict Mario Kart count of games and like is like, well, there's not 8 games, it's not Mario Kart 8, but won't include all the E3 episodes and it's the podcast people episodes.
I agree. He's
in
pretty
the count
fast.
of this podcast.
Yeah, he's
Do you want
pretty
me
fast.
to?
He's pretty fast and loose. That's all I'm saying. I'm not used to this rigor, this supposed rigor out of you, James.
You know, I strive to engage in a long-term plan to someday jump the episode number by 700 episodes, but you all keep causing me to have to just keep trucking along like nothing's happening. And, you know, one day we are going to jump 900 episodes overnight. But if you want to know exactly how many episodes we have released thus far, including this one when you're hearing it, this will be episode 748. However,
there you go, folks.
The episode title is episode 559, phrase we haven't said yet because it's going to be some dumb shit that happens in the show.
So, I mean, you realize that people out there are readjusting their RFN timelines right now.
No, don't do that because that gets you like your Twitter blowing up for like a month. Don't do it. It's not worth the joke.
Next week we're gonna record a 559 Deluxe.
Oh no,
it's gonna be the same
episode
opinions
with a slightly better
remixed.
introduction.
Yeah.
More hot
We're just gonna
takes.
get the introduction right, and we'll put all the content in the first half.
Man, did I derail this one or what?
You did. You're a monster. You still don't even know what episode number it is.
559, right?
Oh, thank God.
If that's accurate.
Guillaume, help.
What do you mean? What?
That's your response to this. Greg, hi. Hello, Greg.
Hoi, hoi, everyone.
Greg, why am I the bastion of maturity in this introduction? This is a problem.
No comment.
Moving swiftly along. All right, new business. I'm going to kick us off this week. Last week, I completely passed on new business, saying something along the lines of, I don't really have anything to talk about. I was wrong. I'd played a game. In fact, I'd streamed that game for multiple hours, and it slipped my mind because I am an idiot. But, Switch eShop game, The Count Lucanor, or of Lucanor. Lucanor? I don't know, Lucanor. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think it's supposed to be Italian-y from a lot of the other names, and I don't know. But
Lucanore. Wow, I'm never attempting that again.
Yeah, that might be our episode title. I'm never attempting that again. But beyond that, so if you remember a long while ago, I talked about an adventure horror game on the 3DS, and I'm now blanking on what it was called. Crap.
Resident Evil?
No. It was the one where you like explored a high school that was trapped in the alternate dimension.
The Corpse Party.
Yeah, I talked about Corpse Party. That was it. And basically, it's a mix of sort of not adventure game puzzles, but like top-down view, kind of Zelda perspective, and then you sort of explore an area to find things to open doors and solve puzzles, and then occasionally just get killed by jump kills. And you have to kind of remember where stuff is, and then there's enemies you have to try to avoid because you really can't fight back. That's kind of what the Count of Lucanor is. So you play as this boy who's run away from home because his mother is so broke she doesn't do anything for his birthday, and he decides he's old enough now that he's going to break out on his own and get rich and live a life versus being a poor dirt farmer. And since his father's left for the war years and years and years ago, it's gotten worse. The implication being very early on that his father didn't leave for the war and is still gone. The war's been over for a long time. He's just not coming back. So the boy goes out and explores for a little while, and he makes some moral choices with people around that he meets on his path. only to find pretty soon thereafter he wakes up inside a castle that has essentially this really spooky castle where all those people that he met outside are in it, and they're coming off as slightly demonic. And basically, he has to explore this castle because he is told by a kobold inside that if he can guess the kobold's name by the end of the night, he'll get to meet the current count and essentially position himself to be the count's heir, which means he would get to be infinitely wealthy, and he would become a count overnight from being a poor dirt farmer. What this involves is solving a tremendous number of puzzles, traps, and avoiding enemies, while collecting letters in the kobold's name. At the same time, you're interacting with these characters that are becoming increasingly afflicted by the curse in the castle. So, for example, when you're outside, you meet this woman and her pig. And he has his father's walking stick that his mother gave him when he said he was going to run away. She pleaded for him not to, but once it was clear he was going to, she gave him her last coins and the walking stick and the last food that she had. And basically, in the lead-up, he gives all that away. He gives it to the woman and her pig to sort of shoo her pig along because her walking stick broke. Only to find that inside the castle, the old woman is the same, but the pig is actually her son, who is walking around on all fours in the nude, who was afflicted by a witch's curse that, because he acted like a pig, he became a pig. And so he's only human when he's inside the castle, although he's still very pig-like in behavior. But as it goes on, you find out not only is this curse pretty bad in and of itself, that the witch who afflicted him is actually his mother, and that you can use his pig-like behavior to put him in the line of fire for you as you solve puzzles. You meet a shepherd pretty early on, and he ends up being decapitated during the affair, but he still talks to you. And his goats carry around his head, and they just dance around in the corner because they're now up on two legs and doing all kinds of spooky shit. And as you solve puzzles and get more letters, the castle fills with more and more enemies that you simply cannot fight. You have to hide from. So the game becomes a lot of, kite them away from where you need to be and then hide and then let them pass, then go into the door and solve a puzzle. It becomes a lot about figuring out spike traps and fires and water moving around and opening doors, finding keys, that kind of stuff. And overall, it's pretty good. It's a fairly short game. I managed to get the so-called complete ending on the first pass. The chat helped out a little bit. They gave me a piece of advice hey, don't skip this. But overall, there's probably not a ton of replayability here, but it's fun. It's a little rough around the edges. It's not as polished as a more sophisticated game might be in this genre. But it was made by a pretty small team. It's I think it's $15. And if you like games like Corpse Party, it's deep in that vein. It's not quite as macabre as that, obviously, because that game is actually unsettling. This game is just spooky, but there's a lot of similarities. And I was having a lot of flashbacks to it. And then there's some nice production there. There's a couple moments of pixelated art that looks really gorgeous. Although overall the game looks pretty simple. Like I said, it's about 4 or 5 hours, and it's a good way to spend a little time if you want to solve some puzzles and be a little spooked out. But the main dish of my new business this week is Dragon Quest Builders, which I talked about the demo about a month ago now. Game came out last week, and I picked it up. And a lot of what I said in the demo is true, or pretty much holds. The demo ends after basically the first wave of building the city of Kalen. There's 4 or 5, places you end up building cities. And it ends right when you get your first teleportal, which takes you to a different area that's still part of the Kalen mission. You end up getting 3 of those. And as you keep building out, you have to build more stuff. I mean, you can go back to all the basic mechanics. Basically, it's Minecraft with Dragon Quest characters. You build your town, you defend against enemy attacks, trying to level the town. And then as your town grows, people start to move in. They give you quests for things to build or find or get. Sometimes it's just hey, we're about to get attacked by a bunch of enemies. And it becomes a tower defense game, and that's the quest. Or you can get out there and mix it up if you want. I just finished the last invasion mission for this area, so that's probably about 10 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. But a lot of that time was spent just building my city. or exploring the areas or outside Kalen to find material to build up my city. At some point, I had to pretty much demolish the entirety of the city because I built walls. So the area around the central point where you put your flag down to start an area, when you enter a new place, you put a flag down, and that's sort of the starting point for your town. It lights up the ground around it in like a big rectangle, and that's sort of your safe zone. That's the area of your city. And so I thought to myself, well, it's true that the city only extends in this box, but what if I build my walls beyond it? What if I just fill the area with ramparts and then just dare the monsters to come get me? And this was a great plan until I realized the enemies were spawning inside of my walls because I built beyond the lit zone. So I had to rebuild pretty much all my walls, which led to me rebuilding all of my living quarters inside the town. But I did enjoy just, calmly putting together, going from everybody sleeps in one room because we're living pretty destitute to building private rooms for all of my residents, turning my little crafting station into a big blacksmith's furnace with all kinds of different crafting tools, upgrading my kitchen from literally a fire on the floor into a brick barbecue nicer than the one I have it in the real world. Just building up all this stuff that let me access more things I could create. And pretty quickly, like, you don't gain levels or anything, even though it's a Dragon Quest game. There are items that increase your max HP, but largely you're just building better weapons, better armor. And I don't even vaguely resemble the character I was at the start of this, even though I'm still in the first area. I went from being armed with a stick and wearing basically a leather bag to full plate armor with a long broadsword and a warhammer, and just beating the ever-living crap out of stuff. And that's fun. Like, it's fun to just get to continue to improve your facilities and improve your equipment and rearrange your town to better suit the needs of the people inside of it, and to make sure that the flow, like things like the flow inside, are good. Because, originally it just sort of developed organically and it was just a complete mess. So, like, to get to my bedroom, you had to walk through 3 other rooms, go down a hallway, take a hard right turn that basically, like, there was a tiny little gap in the middle. And what I found was that people were jumping over my walls because they were jumping on stuff as opposed to using the walkway because it was such a pain in the ass. So my own people who lived in my town. So I went and I rebuilt the entirety of the inside of the town. So there's nice walkways and, like, there's halls and stuff. Where I'm at right now, I don't have any roofing material, so even though they are, quote, buildings, there's no roof. You can do roofs because as part of the story, it's pushed you towards areas that are like ruins and they have roofs on them. So at one point, I basically went to this castle that's story-centric. It's kind of in a ruined state. I climbed up to the top, which required me build ramparts to get up there, and then just stole all the roofing tiles. I haven't gone through the second part of turning my buildings into roofed buildings, but I have them. They're in storage. This game's storage system is pretty forgiving. When you run out of space, it just shoots it off to a magic box that holds it all, and then you can actually pull stuff out of that box in the field. You don't have to go back to the box and get it, which is nice. Yeah, it's nice. Like, it's not the most complicated game in the world, obviously. What it's asking you to do is just fulfill really basic checkbox requirements, get stuff done, keep expanding your town, build facilities that are being asked for, and then go explore to get new materials so you can build more stuff. But it's the kind of game you can lose a lot of time in. I was up late last night exploring because I got bombs. And I thought they were going to have me build bombs to go fight this enemy, because that was sort of the implication. But no, they gave me bombs, and they're like, hey, now you can really go mine some shit. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I can. And I just started blowing holes in cliff faces to see what was behind them. And the answer was a lot of material. So I basically blew a hole towards like bedrock just to see if I could. And I sure did. And I got super rich out of it and then couldn't get out. So I had to use a warp item to save myself. But that's okay. But it does mean that, all the terrain deformation, because this is Minecraft, basically, is forever. So in one of the areas off of the Kalen zone, there's just a big pit that if you fall in, you're pretty much screwed. Which means I have pushed a lot of enemies into that pit and then just gone later and walked off. This is fun. Like, if you didn't try the demo, I recommend you do. You know, it's neat. It looks really nice. It runs well. I haven't done it in handheld mode yet. I suspect I'm going to do a lot of handheld mode time with it. I just haven't had a chance to yet. So I can't vouch for the performance there. I could see it taking kind of a hit, but it plays nice. It's fun. It's largely, you can have stuff on on a laptop playing and just kind of half paying attention to it and still check off accomplishments and get stuff done. And I'm kind of invested. Like, I kind of like the characters and talent, even though it's a Dragon Quest game. The character development is not a high priority for them. I kind of like where we're going here. I like that as people arrived in my town originally, they didn't know what the word build means. And now, like, I'll open up a chest in one of my workshops and somebody went and built a clawfoot bathtub somehow. And they just stuck it in the chest and said, there you go. Which means we now have a soaking tub room. So John would appreciate living there. But,
yes. I like it.
Occasionally they'll just build stuff, and that's cool. Like, you see these characters, and they sound more confident when you talk to them. They're like, we have to protect this place. Versus before, they're like, being here is probably a bad idea. Or you'll walk in there, and then just they've built something cool, and you get to go put it somewhere and go like, yeah, I'm good now. I went to a castle and stole furniture from my bedroom, so I have a nicely appointed bedroom. Everyone else sleeps on straw mats. But that all changed because somebody built a bed. I don't know who did it. Don't know why they did it, but they sure did it. So somebody got a bed in their bedrooms. Good for them. I thought about just putting it in my bedroom, so I had two, but maybe that was just being a little selfish. But yeah, it's fun. I'm having fun with it. It's a good game. You should definitely give the demo a shot, and you might be surprised. I certainly was. So, next up, John, you've been playing some Rocket League again.
I have. So Rocket League was on sale, and Rocket League kind of falls into that Mario Kart class for me where, if playing it on the go is a big appeal. So when I saw it was on sale, I have it on PS4. I originally bought it on PS4. Actually, I didn't buy it on PS4, because if I remember correctly, I think on PS4, when it first came out, it was actually free to PS Plus subscribers. I think. So I don't think I actually paid anything, in my own defense. And then I got it really cheap on Xbox One, and then I got it on sale on Switch. So there you go, Your Honor. I am not as guilty as one might think.
Oh, okay.
So, there you go. All right. Anyways, moving on. So I've been playing this... this typically in undocked mode. I haven't even played it in TV mode yet, just because I don't really care about playing it in TV mode. If I played it in TV mode, I would probably play it on Xbox One or something. Not that there's really any preference over the two, but for me, it's definitely like, I play it usually. I'll play it before I go to bed, right? I'll just have it sitting on the nightstand, and I'll pick it up and play a game or two. There's always usually, because it taps into, at the very least, the Xbox One player list, but I also think it taps into the PC player list, with PS4 being kind of off in its own walled garden because Sony thinks they're too good. So there's always like a lot of people online, which is, what these games are all about. You always want like the largest kind of set of players online, so you always get a good game going. Not that you really always get a good game going, because typically if you just jump into games, I play either 3 versus 3 or 4 versus 4. And you get either a game where you're stomping the other team or the other team stomps you out. You'll see a lot of 8-0 games, 11-0 games, which invokes the mercy rule. A lot of stuff like that. So you're not too often going to be put into a game that is actually really competitive. You're either going to be completely stomping the other team, or you're going to play against a team that just completely wipes you out. That being said, it still plays really well. In handheld mode, it's a little bit pixelated. Like, you can see it kind of like when you're looking at the field. You can see that it's not as clean far away. Yeah,
it's improved a bit since it, because I had it at launch, and definitely the resolution downgrades to keep everything running are not as severe these days. But there's still some cases of it when certain arenas, tend to be more sort of apt for it than others. But I think there's a future patch where they're kind of aiming to improve it again. So
cool.
It's getting there, I think.
Yeah. It still runs really well. I mean, I've played it exclusively on PS4 and Xbox One, and I have no problems with it visually. It looks fine. It looks like Rocket League, just looks, and more importantly, plays like Rocket League always has on those other platforms. The feel is the same. I've never seen any frame rate problems, anything like that. The controls, I like the controls quite a bit. No problems there at all. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's really fun, and I've been playing it over Wi-Fi too, and I haven't really had many problems at all. So, I mean, for me, it's been pretty seamless playing it, and Rocket League in and of itself is incredibly fun. The mechanics, I don't know if I really have to go into any of the mechanics or what the game is about, but basically you're playing with cars and a big beach ball, and you're playing soccer.
Yeah,
So,
it does really seem... It's funny, you would swear this game was made by British people for British people, because if you look at what
Yeah.
sells in Britain, apart from
Yeah.
GTA 5, it's driving
Yeah.
and soccer. So put them together, oh my god, we may as well make it the national sport.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, it's it's pretty popular in a bunch of places. But yeah, I think it's definitely got a foothold here.
Yeah, and it has a couple of cool little, Nintendo specific, perks to it. You can play as Metroid Gunship. There's a card that's modeled after Samus's gunship, and then it has a Luigi car, a Mario car, I think, or it has a Luigi. I think it has a Super Mario car, and then a Luigi hat and a Mario hat that you can put on your car. So there's a lot of little touches like that. That's kind of cool. As opposed to, I like that just because, the other games have a bunch of stuff that I just don't really care about. It's either internet, stuff from internet forums, like something, you can have a flag from like something awful or some site like that, or it's like Fast and Furious cars or something like that God bless Fast and Furious. One of the greatest franchises ever made in the history of American cinema. However, I don't really care about necessarily.
Pause.
I don't really care about having a Fast and Furious car in Rocket League, but
That's the silky smooth fraternity speaking there.
I want you to take a step back here, because it is not one of the greatest films in the canon of American cinema. I do not believe you are giving it its proper due. This is like up there with Metropolis, sir.
I thought you were going to say not one of the. Big...
No, I think this is a worldwide cinematic event.
It's a worldwide phenomenon.
It's pretty much it's that and the Deer Hunter, isn't it? They're pretty much right there. They're very much trying and achieve the same things.
I put it up there with like the greatest of Weimar Republic era German cinema. I think that's really where it belongs. I think it's just a out of time kind of thing. It's almost indistinguishable from the cabinet of Dr.
So, yeah, I was gonna say that is my preferred double bill. Fast and Furious, the fourth one, and then Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
I don't think any human being has ever watched those two movies at the same in the same lifespan.
On the same day. Yeah.
No, I mean in the same life.
Yeah.
I have seen one of those movies, and it's not Fast and Furious. Believe it or not. I've only ever seen the first one. That's the only one I've ever seen.
Oh, they get way dumber. They get way dumber.
Way better, you mean?
I didn't say that they didn't get better.
Yeah,
they just
really depends on what you're looking for.
You're looking for we talked about franchises that can't count. This is a movie made for people who can't count, so it's fine. They could just stop counting them altogether and be good to go. This is the kind of movie that I would like to have seen in an English language cinema in Germany, because I feel like that's got the right audience for it.
Yeah. Hey, too fast, too furious, James. That's how I live. Right?
You're only in the twos? Come on.
Oh man.
We should just make a pool. Guess what the next one of these dumbass things is going to be called?
I don't know what the ninth one's going to be, but
I think it's called like Faster, Furiouser or something like that.
Yeah. Be that as it may, Rocket League for Switch. It's one of those games where it's like, for me, it's kind of a default. Like, obviously I have it on 2 other platforms, so I like it. But it's just it's a perfect game. It's a perfect pick up and play game. And you play a match or two and then put it down and come back the next day and you're all good. and just the gameplay itself is really fun to kind of to play and improve, and you kind of figure things out, and figure out how to where to go, really, like going where the ball isn't to set up shots and make saves and stuff like that. So it's a really good game. Like I would say, I mean, anybody with a Switch should have it as far as I'm concerned. So I have no regrets in picking that up for the third time.
What about the fourth time?
I don't know what the fourth time would be on. I don't really have. I mean, maybe
at that point you would hope that Rocket League 2 would be out. But.
I mean,
why would you make a tube when you can keep selling DLC? DLC's the way to go.
Rocket League VR. You want it. You've always wanted to know what it would feel like to bicycle kick a ball from the driver's seat of a Jeep. And you can throw up as God intended.
Yes.
Pull off that maneuver.
Yeah.
I am the vomit of God. Oh, that's not going to be fun.
I don't know. If it came out on Vita, I might give it a sideways glance.
If it came out on Vita, the Vita would melt. Isn't your Vita waterlogged anyway?
No, my Vita's good to go. It's just rare, and it's just waiting for its next game.
I suspect it's going to be waiting a while. Unless you want to go play some more Japanese visual novels.
We'll see. Vita is life after all.
Vita. Yes. All right. Greg.
Yes.
After I mistakenly included Celeste in the show notes last week because I forgot to take it out of my notes, and I was like, did we talk about that? I guess we talked about that.
Yeah, well, the Radio Historia demo talk went on a bit longer than I imagined because, it kind of dovetailed into your experience with the game and all that.
But this is why I have notes.
Yes, I know. I'll have to put out a post-show advisory in future if something gets scratched. But yeah, it's worked out all right because there's been substantial kind of progress on Celeste during this week, and it would have been a bit iffy to kind of just to come back another, for like the third time in 4 weeks. I mean, that would just be boring. The third time in 4 years happening. That's why we're all so pleased with the Super Bowl result. But this time, last time I should say, where I spoke about Celeste, I was about halfway through playing through the B-sides, which are pretty. The ones I'd done were tough. The ones that were to come were substantially tougher. So those were really quite trying. But it is immensely satisfying when you pull it off. The sort of apex of satisfaction is where you have, and this kind of comes up more in the B-sides, where things, as I said, initially it's almost like a screen-by-screen kind of game, and each time you move to a new kind of screen, you got a checkpoint, essentially. So it's not really about memorizing long strings or pulling off in quick succession long strings of complex maneuvers or anything, because it was pretty broken up. In the B-sides, things start to get longer, and that makes it harder. It probably makes it a bit less sort of fair in some cases, in terms of a lot of the time it's really upfront about what's going to happen. In fact, there's these sorts of these little like binocular sort of emplacements where you can actually just look at what the whole sort of succession of once it all scrolls through that part of the level, what it's going to look like, so you can actually plan for things that are gonna happen. If, for instance, you're on going to be on a moving platform or something like that, where you're going to need to jump, or where you might need to switch sides, clinging onto the platform, something like that. So it's really quite, even for as hard as it is, it's really quite fair. This starts to slip a bit in the B-sides. It's more like, okay, you're here for challenge. We're going to give it to you. So it gets longer and it gets considerably more difficult, and you're going to have to kind of either react brilliantly to something or come back. So the real sort of apex of satisfaction is when you do something that you were ridiculously stuck on for ages, and then there's still more before you're really safe and you get to a checkpoint, but somehow you pull that off first time, and that's just like, yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful feeling. Of course, the inevitable flip side of that feeling is when you do something that you've been struggling to do for ages, and then there's like a really quite simple bit to kind of stick the landing, and you screw it up. That feels like complete shit. So, you know, yeah, it's a very sort of amplified experience doing the B-sides, you know, and I found the capture function. This has obviously the screenshots, but also the video capture in it, the 30-second thing, and I actually found that quite useful as the B-sides went on, in terms of kind of like sometimes when you are expected to sort of do something really fast, or when you get to, you know, deep into a sort of sequence that's really quite difficult, you might almost miss exactly, you know, what happened. You know, so you could do a little bit of a self-scout and say, okay, how did I bugger that up? And then, you know, the next time I get there, because sometimes it can be quite difficult just to get back to where you were, because you know, the precision required, even if you basically know how to do it, you're not necessarily going to pull it off all the time. But when you do pull it off, you want to be prepared. So, you know, I did a lot of that, kept going, and eventually I kind of did all the B-sides that I could, and it's, you know, it was exhausting, Frank. Some of the most exhausting kind of challenges I can remember undertaking for quite a while, but it was very satisfying. But then it became apparent that there were actually some collectibles that I hadn't got in the regular, you know, the A sides that were, you know, that had been eluding me, that the more challenges were kind of hiding behind. I was like, oh, okay, you know, there's more to this, yeah, all right. So I kind of set about trying to find those. In the process, I got all the strawberries I could, which are the ones that are more up front, and there's, you know, like nearly 200 of those. But these crystal hearts are kind of more well hidden, sometimes behind kind of puzzles and cryptic clues and stuff like this. So it took me quite a long time to find all of those. In fact, I found all but two, and then where I'd basically kind of glimpsed them, I'd found like the hint that was supposed to lead you to them, and I couldn't for the life of me get it. So I looked those up, because and I'm glad I did, because I would not have got there in a timely fashion for those two. So you know, nice to move on then to you know, there's sort of another challenge, which was again like really tough, really kind of but really rewarding when I did it. And then having done that, there's even more stuff hidden behind that. It's a real kind of super duper upper echelon chat, which I think I may have met my match, having looked at some of them. This could be it, but it's gone on a lot longer than I would have thought. You know, the initial sort of playthrough to the top of the mountain feels, you know, beefy, you know, and very satisfying. But, you know, when you factor in these B-sides and these secret things and you know, there is a lot of stuff in this game, and you know, I continue to enjoy it throughout. I mean, I can imagine, you know, a fair few players will probably be saying check please sooner than I did. But even if they do, I think they still would have really enjoyed it. So, you know, not only are you talking about, you know, the sort of the aesthetics and the play mechanics, all that kind of stuff are pretty impeccable, but it is a pretty beefy package. I think I'll probably put more than 40 hours into it now. Which, admittedly, a lot of that, well, a lot probably not, but a significant amount of that will probably be fruitlessly searching for things, misunderstanding cryptic hints or whatever. But you know, it's a lot of game, and it's really, really satisfying. So it's continue to be a delight.
I'm really looking forward to this one. So I'm glad you've got 40 hours is kind of a shocking number, to be honest.
Yeah, like I said, there's flab in that number, as there usually is with me and portable games. I've mostly played it portably, but there is if you want to drill down into the toughest stuff this has got to offer, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting a number less than half that, so I'm kind of dumbfounded.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you know, probably if you like, you're probably where I was, you know, after when I spoke about it the first time. Probably was like about 15 hours, and I can imagine a lot of people might leave off after that point, and that would be pretty satisfying. But do it. And I mean, I did take it. I'm sure some people, again, on the other side of it, there's probably a lot of people who could do the B-sides a lot quicker than I did, because it was ridiculous. The amount of deaths. There were times where I died on things so many times I was beginning to think, am I actually hoping I'm going to get better at this, or am I hoping that I'm going to sort of be the chimp at the typewriter that flukes his way into writing Midsummer Night's Dream?
Hey,
you know, like that.
You get through it.
It was getting to that point where it's like, am I just hoping I'm going to fluke this eventually?
Hey, sometimes you hit a bug in the game just the right way that makes you, gives you an undeserved win.
Just bypass like 3 screens, does it? But eventually persistence paid off. I can imagine some people just naturally better at this sort of thing could probably make quicker work of it. But just in terms of the amount of challenge and level design and all that kind of stuff, rather than just looking at it in terms of hours, it is substantial.
Hey, it doesn't matter how you solve it. If you solve it, you solve it. Right. Guillaume.
Yeah, so I've been playing quite a bit. First, I guess I'm going to talk about Gradius Rebirth, one of the WiiWare games that I got with my leftover Wii points. I realized downloading this and trying to play it for a little bit that I hate Gradius.
Cool.
I hate this freaking series.
Nice.
It's horrible.
All right, well, you go a little far on that, but okay.
Yeah, well, I really have a problem with the main problem I think with Gradius is that whenever you lose a life, you start over. You are completely underpowered, and underpowered doesn't just mean you don't have all the fancy weapons and the options following your ship and all that. It also means that you're slow as molasses. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. No, it is. That is such a. It is a real problem.
Yeah, and other series will have other shoot 'em ups will have. Usually, you don't upgrade your speed the way that you do in Gradius.
A number of series kind of had that sort of mechanic maybe initially, and then kind of graduated out of it. Like if you think of something like R-Type, like by the time you get to R-Type Delta on the PSX era, the original PlayStation, that had speed that you could just modulate with the shoulder buttons.
Right.
So it was not a power up. But with Gradius, I guess it just kind of. I'm trying to remember if there were games that changed that. I've played most of them, but it's been a while. So. But it kind of just stayed stuck in its ways, I think.
Yeah, and if they changed that at some point in the series, they went back to the original.
Yeah, well, the thing about Rebirth is
that
it's explicitly a nostalgia series, so you can kind of understand they wouldn't. Although I will say, in the case of Castlevania, the jumping is way more liberalised than 8-bit Castlevania.
Yeah, I didn't hate Castlevania Rebirth. Like it was funny to see like they brought the enemies from the Game Boy game, but that's about it. Like the eyeballs, but then like they just basically it's a new game. It's not really quite a remake of the Castlevania Game Boy game, and it's its own thing. Here they didn't really improve the controls in any noticeable way. It's still a 2-button game where one button selects the power-up and the other one shoots. The power-ups are the exact same. There's nothing new from that you haven't seen in other Gradius games. You've got 3 types of ships, which is less than, I don't know, like the Gradius 3 on the Super Nintendo, or
Super Nintendo, you've got very customizable sort of power-up sequencing.
but you had like basically a choice of 5 different like missiles, and
you had like presets that you could pick in 3 on Super Nintendo, but you also had like just ones where you could completely customize it, including like with like I think the E laser, where it kind of like surrounds you and turns into a big orb, and like the reduced shield, which is easily the best shield because it makes you smaller. It makes your hitbox smaller. Like, why wouldn't you pick that?
Yeah, so here like you've got 3 like ships that already have kind of their power-ups preset, and 2 of them have the 2 kind of ball shields in front of the ship, and the third one is the shield that envelops the ship, but it's, it doesn't make you smaller or anything. It's not out of the question that you unlock more ships if you finish the game, but I haven't been able to do that so far, and I'm playing on very easy, giving myself 7 lives per continue, but as I alluded to earlier, like having several lives doesn't actually help you all that much because you're so underpowered every time you die.
Yeah.
On easy, although like on very easy, when you die usually, and they start you at the mid-level checkpoint, they do kind of put all like power-up capsules in front of your ship, like that you can pick up, and you can upgrade pretty quickly, at least like the speed a couple of times, and maybe get the bombs or the lasers. Like it's your choice. But the problem is that you still, it's still a problem that you're so slow at the beginning. Like it's actually kind of difficult to pick up all the capsules that they put right in front of you.
No, I mean, in those the classic kind of outer space like intros before you get into the level proper, it's like well and good. You might be able to shoot the chains of enemies to get the power up, orbs or whatever. But would you be able to actually collect them, even if you did?
Right.
Because the mobility is that crushingly slow. I mean, that's generally what my memories of Gradius as a child dominated by. Everything is going absolutely swimmingly. You are a parade of death, and then you die once, and
then it's over. You have to use the Konami code, which only works like once per life or per continue.
Yeah. How do they implement it in this specifically?
It gives you 4 options. It gives you. I think that's pretty much all that gives you, though. It might give you also missiles, but it doesn't change your bullets into lasers, and it doesn't upgrade your speed. So you kind of have to, like, if you die, like, you kind of have to use the power up immediately and collect the capsules to improve your speed immediately. Anyway, like it hasn't, the code hasn't helped me much. I've been using it a lot, and I just it's such a frustrating game. And Karen was watching me like just swearing at the TV, and she said, "This doesn't look fun." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I agree. It's bullshit." So, and the fact is, Gradius Rebirth, I don't think really offers anything that you can't get from other versions of the game. Maybe like if you're, I don't know, like unless I guess like if you're a huge fan, you've already played through Gradius 2.
Yeah,
and,
I mean that's the Rebirth thing. It's like it's another one.
But I mean, I think that Count Rebirth and Castlevania Rebirth had more to give, like had more newness to it, had more, Count Rebirth had these crazy cutscenes, and it had pretty over the top preset scenes. Set pieces.
Set pieces, yes.
Right, so just bonkers set pieces, and Castlevania Rebirth was, at least had new levels. This game, I'm not sure even has really new levels.
The themes are all very classic.
Exactly.
Themes,
yeah, like it's just like
heads, the mechanical bass. This is.
We gotta have the space Moai.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like it's so freaking like this game. This series has been so self-referential, right? Like, and it's like you play the first level of Gradius Rebirth, and it's like, oh yeah, the volcanoes that spit rocks. Well, that's a callback to Gradius 1 and Gradius 2. And Gradius 3,
it usually gets referred back, and to Rive as well.
Yeah. And like the bosses and everything, there's so little that's new in this game, so I really can't recommend it, especially
as I recall, it was of the Rebirth games. It seemed like it was the hook with that one was meant to be kind of, it was more sort of digestible for like high score play, like going round and stuff, rather than like a big sprawling. It's got a mix, because it's only like 5 stages instead of a lot. You think of like latter games of the series, they tend to be quite a bit bigger than that. But the problem with that is just, I guess, you didn't really have the most kind of great infrastructure for sharing scores and stuff on the on WiiWare. But it wasn't like Star
did...
Soldier R either, which was explicitly a caravan mode game.
Right. I don't know. Like I did try the score attack mode a little bit. I didn't get all that far. It seemed to have branching paths. Like if you there's early on in the first level, you've got this kind of mountain with a hole in the middle. That's something you've seen in other Gradius games. And if you go through the hole, you get some points. And also it seemed to change the rest of the levels. Like the volcanoes later on didn't spit rocks anymore. So, like maybe there are a few like secrets like that to find in the score attack mode that you don't find in the regular one. And the score attack mode used to have online leaderboards, but of course that went away when the online for WiiWare.
I'm trying to remember whether it really kind of... Yeah, because the biggest thing with that, you want to be able to have like a friends list comparison kind of thing.
Well, any kind of friends list that you would have,
which you couldn't
it would have to be like your 40 friends that you input their friends codes.
There'd have to be specific codes for that game, like or something. Which
you don't recognize your friends from a 40-digit code that you had to input for this.
That's what I was saying. That even though there were a few games on WiiWare that were, kind of high score games and stuff, because obviously Star Soldier R was there right at the start, and it kind of makes sense because those can be the sort of games where it's not very memory intensive, but maybe if you really get into it, you put a lot of time into it. But that kind of time investment probably comes if you've got more of a trying to beat friend scores and stuff, and then you didn't have the particularly good basis for comparison because of the way that all that worked. So it probably would benefit from being on something more modern.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, one of the other things we got out of WiiWare, because talk about these kind of really originally very basic arcade games getting these sort of nostalgia-driven downloadable games. We got like was it Space Invaders Get Even?
Yeah, but that was not really.
No, hold on. Gradius Get Even, where you have to be the one pilot who manages to take out the overpowering parade of death. You get to be the hero.
I like it. Bacterian game and all that.
Yeah. So basically, like 99.9% of the time, you're going to lose, but that 1% you get to knock that thing back.
It's basically me playing the latter levels of Celeste. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, see? So
anyway, it doesn't sound that much fun either.
Get on it, Konami.
Yeah. So, Gradius Rebirth pissed me off. I also finished Night in the Woods, and man, like that was a really good story, although there are some things I can't say because it would just be spoiling the ending, and no one wants that. But I don't know if I missed clues, but it kind of feels like the events that start towards the middle of the game are not really. Their conclusion is not really the kind of there's some sort of mystery going on, and it feels like the answer was not really foreshadowed. It feels like kind of feels like they decided to go in a different direction like halfway through making the game, and then didn't really go back and kind of pepper like hints or kind of a build up or foreshadowing into the first half.
There's a weird. So in many ways, the story is written like an allegory for depression, except also there's literal depression, so it sort of gets muddled.
And also there's kind of definitely political leanings in there, and kind of a message about like their political leanings, and so like it all
it gets muddy.
A little bit, and I was looking at a kind of a wikia for the game, and it just confirmed that a lot of the payoff, like the ending, a lot of the characters or things or themes that come up in the ending are not really things that you've seen earlier on.
No, there's a handful of hints, but yeah, it's not much.
Right, like stuff, like there are. It's hard to talk about, but basically, like there are new characters you've never heard of.
Yes.
That are doing things or have been doing things, and like you've never seen them in the game before. They just all of a sudden they're there, and they're the explanation for what's been going on.
Yeah, a couple of them get name dropped, or they're relatives of a character you've met. But yeah, I mean, you haven't like they're sort of stonemasoning it around, and you don't. It's kind of like the Simpsons episode where that Homer joins their Masons equivalent. And they're responsible.
A classic.
Stonecutters. Yeah, they're responsible for everything, and even have a song to go with it.
Who does make Steve Gutenberger stuff?
We do. We do.
Except that the stonemasons in that Simpsons episode are all characters we've seen before. You've got Hibbert and everyone.
Most of them.
Lenny and Carl. And
but Patrick Stewart was like the
he
leader,
was,
I guess,
yeah,
as the guest star.
Yeah, but
I've
like
seen that episode recently.
It's kind of that way though. Like there's just like, oh no, they were always here running everything, and you realize,
yeah. Anyway, so that's felt a little bit weird, but still, like I really enjoyed the game. I'm reading up like the announcement of the Weird Autumn kind of definitive edition, which is what the Switch release was. Like it was kind of an updated version. I'm reading up what it contained, and it seems like maybe the version that I've been playing contains more than the original release, like more of sometimes like you play you're in Maze Dreams and you're kind of platforming around finding these 4 little characters, and then that's basically all you have to do in these dreams, and they're very ethereal and very weird and very beautiful, but it seems like the definitive version of this game has more of those, and it kind of got old to me as I played the game, so I don't know if it was a good idea to just add more of that. Apparently there's a few mini games that you didn't see in the original release, and also this version of the game contains 2 miniature episodes that were actually released before the game came out, and they were made before the game came out, and they were released as free episodes on PC. And there's text that comes up when you choose to play them. That's very clear. Like we created this little mini episode to test our systems and test some ideas that we had to make the game, and also like like Christmas was coming up, and we had been working on the game for like a year at this point, and we wanted to put out something. So like in a couple of weeks, or in like 4 or 5 weeks, we created this and we put it out, and so that's what you're playing. And these mini games are not really all that connected to the full game, so don't expect like an extra chapter that explains what's in more detail what's been going on. What you're playing is so these miniature episodes are called Longest Night, which is a mini game where you kind of link together stars in the sky to create constellations, and it's a mini game that finds its way into the full game. But here, like, you've got kind of the new setting that you're doing that around like a campfire with all your friends, and everyone comments, and like there's some good writing in there. And it's funny because it's this Longest Night episode is kind of referenced in the full game at some point. Like if you spend time with Angus in the game, May is just like, oh yeah, it's like that time when we're sitting around the fire and you were like you were naming all the constellations and you were so good at it. And he was like, I don't remember that. And like, yeah, it happened. And when you play this mini episode, you kind of realize like, oh, she dreamed this. So anyway, it's cute. It's kind of funny. And the other episode is a little bit meatier, and it uses all the mechanics that you find in the full game, except that you're playing as one of the constellations, like one of the characters that you hear about in the full game. And so you kind of get a little tale that you play through, and it's got a few new mechanics actually. Like you can throw snowballs around. You can you build snowmen. It's also pretty cute. But it's got even less to do with a full Night in the Woods game than the Longest Night episode did. So anyway, it's worth checking out. But if you haven't played these episodes, like they're not really a reason to go back to the game, I don't think. But if you bought the Switch version, then you got them anyway. So I don't know, give them a shot. Yeah. And the last thing that I've been playing, very quickly, I've been playing since before the holidays, Suikoden II. And I had played Suikoden 1 back when I first got my PlayStation 3, so years ago. And that was a fun little RPG. I think I remember it taking me maybe like 30 hours to complete. But I had a fun time. Like, I really enjoyed the swiftness of the combat, which, you know, the combat system was very simplistic. There's literally an auto battle kind of menu item in the battles that you can select, and it will get you through most enemy encounters without problem, and you gain levels very, very quickly. So it was a brisk, you know, short, just kind of easy RPG with you know, some nice sprite graphics for the PlayStation 1, and I really enjoyed it. And Suikoden 2 has like the reputation of being like one of the best RPGs of all time. At least like if you listen to Jason Schreier on Kotaku, like it's his favorite RPG, I think. And but he's not alone. Like I've heard so many people sing the praises of this game for so long, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it was very hard to come by. It was a sprite-based, again, RPG for the PlayStation 2 that came out, I think, either like 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after Final Fantasy VIII. And as a result, it bombed really hard, and very few copies were printed. And so it's one of those games that at some point fetched probably over $200 on eBay. So I think it kind of built its mystique, and it contributed a lot to its reputation. But so I played it as a PlayStation 1 classic on PlayStation 3, and I'm not feeling it as much. The game is very well written, and initially, like, I was really into the story because the game does a great job of, you know, plunging you into the action, and then like immediately stuff happens, and immediately like you're chased by this evil empire before you even had the chance to assemble your ragtag team of rebels, and immediately like every time that you go to a new town that you find refuge somewhere, the Empire is right on your heels and razes the town, and you actually, you know, like there's actual consequences here, you know, like these towns full of townspeople that you could speak to, NPCs, shops, all gone, everyone dead, and it's just like, holy crap, this is pretty dark, and this is pretty cool. But the more I play, and the more the game turns into a kind of find a way to advance the next cutscene kind of game, because the battles are as simplistic as they were in the first game, but there's just more of them. There's more distance to cross from one town to another. There's not really much to sink your teeth into in terms of like strategy, in terms of building a party, in terms of equipping them. Like, it's all very, very simplistic. All you have to hang on to in this RPG, I find, is kind of the plot, and the way to advance the plot is really just find the next person to talk to, and find them in the right order. It's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time, and I'm not even sure why, you know? Like I find that, I don't know, the game is spinning its wheel.
Yeah,
Kind of
it sounds like there's a lot of filler and a lot of meaningless stuff that's just there to make the game longer.
Yeah, well, it's the main kind of conceit behind the Suikoden games is that you have to assemble a team of 106 people,
Yep.
I think.
106 stars.
It's 6 stars, yeah, and the game seems to struggle to find an excuse to put them in your way. I don't know, like it just feels like at this point in the game I'm infiltrating a university town, and so I'm pretending to be enrolled as a student in this university, and I have to find the mayor of the town who's in hiding. And so right now all I'm doing is I'm going around talking to every NPC. I go through the town like clockwise to make sure to not overlook anyone, miss anything. I go back into the same buildings over and over again until I can find the one thing that changed, until I can find the one place where like there are some guards that I can that I can listen to that will give me some clue or something. And if it sounds tedious, it's because it is. So
I mean, they got to hide 108 people. It's gonna make you work for it, I guess.
yeah, so I'm really like I'm not into this game anymore, really so much. And I looked at a walkthrough, and I'm about halfway through, and I don't know. Like I feel like this would be a game that perhaps would have made a much bigger impact on me if I had played it at a time, when I was in college. Maybe I had more free time, or it seems like a good game to sink your teeth into if you're between jobs or something, if you've got lots and lots of free time.
Yeah.
But
so get fired, play Suikoden 2.
Yeah.
That's the RFN advice.
Yeah, and then I will have more than like 1 hour per evening to go around the town to talk to various NPCs that always say the same thing, and
yeah, or like
until I find the right one.
Something to play over Christmas break. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I would have played it over Christmas break if I could have brought it with me portably, but the game actually doesn't run on PlayStation Portable, on PSP. You can't access it in any way on the PSP, so I would have needed a Vita, which I don't
you need
have,
a Vita.
So.
Man, that's a pretty good slogan.
Ever.
I should be a marketing guy.
Said no one ever.
I need a Vita.
I think the window to get a Vita is pretty much.
All I Want for Xmas is the next PSP website? What are you doing?
Basically, like this game has me kind of wishing that PS1 Classics
would. Are you gonna make a YouTube rap?
That PS1 Classics would come out on the Switch. Like that's basically that would be the best way to play it. But at this point, I'm not getting a Vita and a memory card, an overpriced memory card. So
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's my downer of a new business.
Thanks, Guillaume.
I would expect nothing less.
You're welcome.
That's the biggest downer yet. Wow. All right. Well, on that, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's time for the very first and very second of our WiiWare retroactives that aren't complete rigged nonsense. So stay tuned for that. Time for the WiiWare Retroactive Express to come to town, because we're going to be doing a number of... I feel like you've already derailed this, John. Because we are going to be doing a number of short WiiWare experiences as our retroactive. And if you missed our announcement last week, next week we're doing another one. Just one this time, though. And that's Alien Crush Returns. Is it Return or Returns? Returns. S. Which is like pinball. So I mean, it doesn't need a whole segment. So we're only gonna do a little bit of retroactive, and then
it's a pinball game with a story mode, so it might be meatier than we think.
Meaty's not
probably not.
Meaty's not a word you want to use for this game. But that's not what we're talking about this week. this week we've got a duo of Nintendo-published pointer-based games, You, Me, and the Cubes, and Bonsai Barber. We're going to start with You, Me, and the Cubes. We're going to set aside, about 20-ish minutes to talk about each one, and then we'll flip over and maybe have some kind of compare and contrast because these two sort of work well for it. But who wants to describe what You, Me, and the Cubes is?
I could describe it.
Go for it.
Okay, so effectively you have these creatures called follows.
Yes, I think that definitely would be preferable pronunciation.
Yeah. And what you have to do is you are presented. It's a puzzle game, and what you have to do is you are presented with a cube that you have to put these fallows on, and you throw them at the cube in pairs, and you have to make it so that the cube stays balanced relatively. With the idea being that you eventually get into multi-cube structures where you have to make sure that you have a follow on each cube. So it'll say you have to place 8 follows on the cubes. So to do that, you have to you have to place them with the pointer in 2 different spots, 2 at a time, and then you have to have the cube. You have to have all of the cubes occupied, and also kind of hold its balanced state for 5 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever the challenge is.
Right, and every time that you want to throw follows on there, you need to shake. You shake the follows. You shake the controller.
Right.
To kind of create the follows inside the controller.
Do you think it's meant to be like the sort of pump action shotgun or something?
Yeah, or I don't know.
Like
I don't know what the point is.
Shake your
I
Wii
guess.
remote to spit your children out.
So it should have had the classic sound
really,
effect coming out of the Wii remote. I'm sure.
I think it's really just like an excuse to not allow you to just shoot the follows like fast enough to
it's kind of because a lot of it is like panic, isn't it?
Right.
This game.
Yeah, the whole point is to keep those cubes balanced, and if you were to be able to send the follows really quickly, it would make the challenge much less challenging. God, I'm terrible.
It's just you could because you could obviously start to sort of see if it's tipping,
right?
And, the longer it tips for, the more trouble you're in.
Right.
So it's kind of building in a bit of a deliberate lag there, so that if you do have a kind of unbalanced structure, it's a lot more problematic. I mean, it's really trying to get you to sort of get that correct placement initially. It doesn't. I mean, I played this on a Japanese Wii because that's what I had it on originally, but so I don't know whether anything changed because it was quite a few months later. For a game like this, there was quite a lag in it coming out. But when you throw the two people on correctly, so it balances perfectly. It's kind of like nice. I can't remember. Is it nice play or something?
That's what it says. Yes.
Yeah.
No localization effort was spared. I mean, given to this game.
So it really, if you keep doing that, then everything stays, correctly, and the people stick on sort of evil. Because the other part of it is like you can kind of pass a stage and then move on to the next bit where the structure spawns another cube to make things more complicated. But if your little guys were kind of unbalanced, wobbly at the moment that it happens, they just fall off and they don't count towards your score. And that's like the kind of, there's passing it, but then there's the kind of doing it properly, like getting a medal type of thing, which is having a set number of people survive by actually being stable enough to kind of sit down in the fetal position and stick to the cube.
Yep.
Steep symbolism here. And the thing is, the cube structures themselves, as they grow, aren't balanced in and of themselves.
No,
so,
like you'll have a cube grow out of the first cube, and right there, like the symmetry is lost. And so it becomes... That's a thing, though. I don't know if we're getting into that right away, but like I found that it's a little bit tough to guess... what the proper play is. You know, like I feel like you kind of need more feedback than the game gives you to be able to actually balance these little people once you've got more than one cube. You know, you can't just look at the surface of the cubes. I don't know, you kind of have to imagine where the middle point, where the equilibrium
the center
is,
of gravity would
the
be.
center of gravity, but it's, I don't know, like I found that to be pretty difficult without any kind of other...
I guess it's that's the and I mean, obviously when you're dealing with a cube, it's immediately obvious, you know, what you're dealing with. Whereas once it starts spawning all these extra ones and it becomes this asymmetric, just irregular thing, then it isn't immediately apparent. I guess it's really just expecting that you're going to kind of get a feel for it over time. You know, but and also doesn't help necessarily, like sometimes, because it's obviously a 2D representation of this 3D structure, I kind of feel like sometimes you think you're putting it like, you know, sort of equidistant from a certain point or something, and then it turns out you didn't. Like, I mean, I guess really what you're supposed to do is kind of cycle through the viewpoints and really make sure you're getting it right. But I could have imagined this sort of thing being like maybe like an early 3DS thing when it was still in that phase of like, oh look, you know, it actually helps you play a game,
right?
Kind of phase, because it might have done the depth, you know, on this kind of thing.
I didn't struggle too much with being able to hit the balance points, being able to eyeball it. I think largely what I would struggle with
I've
is...
seen the YouTube of your stream, and you were
well,
having a little bit more difficulty that you let on.
No, what usually happens is they start to move around, and then you had to figure out, like, okay, why is it unbalanced? Like, if you're starting in like a neutral spot, like, it wasn't that hard to go, okay, I can hit here and here and I'll be balanced. It was when they're like rolling around and then you spawn, I can't remember what the gray ones are called.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like, where just chaos starts to happen.
They're the pale follows, right?
Yeah. So what they do is they basically knock down your people, and that causes unbalance immediately. And there's nothing you can do about them unless you catch them in the act.
When I played this, you know, originally 9 years ago, I spoke about it nearly 400 episodes ago. If anybody wants to go and find that, I kind of initially thought, like, well, why are they little people? Why don't you throw in like objects on, you know? But it is because they have these sort of little behaviours, isn't it? You know, the fact that, like, once some start to slip, if they weren't stable, like, the others will, like, start to move towards them, like, trying to save them, which exacerbates the problem and things like that. So it's like, again, it is that chaos factor, you know, and then, like you said, you get the sort of the enemy character thing and all that. I guess why they went with, because it is, on the one hand, you got this super sterile cube thing going on, but then you've got these creatures involved. It's a bit incongruous, but I get they have their reasons as well.
Yeah, it's really, the game only gets tough when it gets weird and like shit starts to break down.
And it can, like I said, it can be if things can stay stable, then, you know, it just you could keep going and everything's kind of pretty. There's a timer, everything's timed, and it's kind of like hitting checkpoints, you know, in a racing game. But the thing is, once stuff starts to go wrong, it can really just unravel fast, because when they do, like, start, if it becomes unbalanced and they fall off, that takes away time. So you could go from having, you know, what feels like plenty of time to no time at all really fast, and especially if you kind of bungle your attempts to, you know, rebalance it and in fact make it worse or something. It's just, it can completely come apart.
And the worst is when you got like one pale person, like you shoot it and it starts messing around and unbalancing your cubes, and then the next follow is also a pale one, and it's just like, and like at some point I got 3 in a row and I was really not, you know, in a position where I could afford it, so I was just like, oh my god, this is hell.
So what's worse is they carry around to the next phase too. So when the cube rotates off, everybody who survives just sits down and they just stick to it, which is a little bit unsettling.
Yeah.
And they're no longer factored into the weight of the cube or anything like that. But the pale follows just climb up the side, and continue to produce chaos. So by the end of the 7-cube chain, you might have a bunch of them running around if you can't clear them out.
Thing is, though, you can easily shoot one pale follow on one that's already in the cube, and that makes them that takes them out.
So if you shoot a pale follow with the pale follow, it takes them out?
Yeah, or it made them visible, and then you could shoot a regular follow on them to make it go away. And when you shoot down the pale follows, it gives you like 10 seconds or something.
Yeah, so I know you can do that if you catch them in the act of trying to knock somebody over.
Right.
But that's not super common, and especially if they're already causing chaos. Like, I have to rebalance cubes now. Like, you're just waiting for them to do it.
Yeah. And the worst, well, yeah, and the thing is, though, like, even when you don't have a pale follow, like, next in line to shoot, like, when you've got the regular ones, you have to shoot them 2 at a time, and that kind of, you have to think fast. Otherwise, you're just going to further unbalance your cubes, and, yeah, I don't know, like, they really want you to panic, and at the same time, they really put, like, like the shaking of the remote and stuff like that. They put a lot of obstacles in your way so that you can't actually fix the situation really quickly.
Yeah, I can't think of a worse button press as shake Wii remote to fire, which I guess
or
is deliberate.
Jump is another horrible one.
Is deliberately there to make it difficult for you to react to what's going on screen.
It's to load, not fire, right?
No, but you do fire them, yeah, because you point and you press a button to aim, and then you swing the Wii remote to throw them.
A swing. Yeah, it's not shake so much as a swing. I mean, it's
right.
not as like I said, the reload is the kind of the
shaking
up the Coke bottle kind of thing, whereas that you just do one motion.
Yeah, but I never got used to the whole, like, okay, shake, point, press, then swing, then shake. Like, I don't know, I always felt like, I forgot to shake. And
or like I'd be shaking and the game making that very quiet dunk 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 telling me that I didn't have 2 dots on the field, even though I pressed A twice. Something happened that made one of them no longer viable or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god,
that can
happen. The other thing that can blow you up here is the stuff that they do to the cubes. Some of the cubes just freeze them, everything in place. It gives you a moment of balance. Those are awesome. Some of them are like trampolines, and those are a nightmare.
Yeah, and there's the ones where you kind of have to work the perimeter of them.
Yeah,
so it's kind of intrinsically more difficult to get a good balance. And then you've got ones where you have to work with a certain number on a particular part of the cube structure. So again, it's kind of limiting your options for how to balance it, and the entire structure making it more difficult.
And it doesn't really explain to you what these things do. They give you a name, but a lot of times it's like, this is the helper cube. What the fuck's a helper cube?
I haven't figured that out. Yeah,
I haven't either. And so something moves, or it like a little strobe moves around inside it. But beyond that, I can't figure out what the fuck's happening. The one though where it has the numbers on the face, and that's the maximum number you can put on it. Those ones are a real piece of shit when they put them low, and like the other follows just wandering around like assholes walk onto them and cause it to explode, launch them all away, and just completely. It's like, you stupid bastards! If you just sit down and wait, it would be fine.
That's where getting that perfect play is so important, because they do just sit right. If you get that nice play thing straight away, they generally tend to sit still at that point. They're not good. Whereas if you do it pretty well, but not so well that you get the nice play, that's when they can start. Like I said, I guess this is where the reason why they made them little people is the fact that they start wandering around and that whole chaos factor.
So this is a Nintendo published game. Not Nintendo developed. Why aren't these Miis? I mean, because they're most of the way there. Like, it's just, I feel like
it's just made up of your Mii Plaza back in the day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So it just would have been endless streams of Hitler Miis falling off cubes all the time.
You know what? No,
it's
but like,
funny
I
'cause
feel
it's
like
true.
I mean, you know, I'm not just saying that apropos of nothing. Like that was a thing. Like back on Wii,
Oh, yeah.
if your Plaza for people who didn't live through it the way we did, like your Mii Plaza was gonna be filled with Jesus and Hitler. Like that was those were the two.
I mean, it
guys
happened.
that
And
dominated.
this is a 2009 game. Like, that's peak me time. Like, you would have figured that at some point. It's kind of shocking it wasn't just Mii's, and then you would have gotten to see the what was it, the whistle, just parade on through.
BJ, yeah, BJ, that was.
Just throw him off the side immediately. Nope, not having this. It's kind of a weird omission. Like I at first thought they were Mii's, and then I realized no, they're not.
They're all the same, right? Like they don't have features. The male ones have
there's a
blue
male one and
hair.
a female one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. And besides that, they're just clones. So this is a big allegory for something.
But I guess the thing about placing them, you know, two at a time is important because it kind of alludes, you know, along with the title, to the fact I feel like it was meant to be played co-op. I think I talked about this 9 years ago. That, you know, I kind of liked it on a certain level. You know, when I played it back then, kind of like that mix of like it's super precise and careful until it isn't, and then it's just frantic crazy, just fling shit at it, make it better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been. I remarked then that they would have been, you know, a lot more kind of intense in that regard if it was, you know, contingent on two people, you know, synchronizing their, you know, moves to get it done, and I never had that opportunity, sadly.
Yeah, and Karen watched me play a little bit, and she had no interest in trying out the co-op mode, so could not try that mode either. But I don't see, you know, like again, unless you share consciousness, I don't see how this would end well for anyone.
Yeah, it would be. It's substantially more difficult, I can only imagine, but potentially more fun. But, you know, I don't know. Some of the more complex stages, maybe not. I mean, as I recall, and you have to correct because I was still working off my old save file on the Japanese Wii. Weren't all the stages just open?
Yep, you can just pick whatever you want.
Yeah, you could just pick. Yep. You could just pick what you want. So, I mean, I guess, you know, you don't pick those later stages just because they're open to you if you was doing it in co-op, because it'd probably be much too advanced.
I do wonder what, like, when they made this game, Lemonade in the was it Lemonade? I think it was. Oh, no, it wasn't. Sorry, Pokepal in the talkback thread noted that this game's kind of relaxing and also kind of unnerving.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, sound design wise, and
it's
even
weird.
Sound design wise, and even the menu, I felt there's quite a strong Pikmin vibe. I thought it kind of, you know, but without the kind of the sort of, yes, well, more sterile and all that, but just that sort of little bit of like sci-fi, but like kind of ambient trippiness. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Pikmin at that time. I doubt that's because it had anyone in common or anything. Like you said, it was not Nintendo developed.
Probably just from that time period, right?
Maybe they took some inspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just weird to be like, what was the, you know, what were they trying to go for with this? Were they actually trying to hit that, like, oh, this is really calming, but also I'm freaked out because the cube is going all over the place?
It's calming until it's not. Like, is it once it goes awry and it's like, you know, the little screams of people dying, which again is a little bit Pikmin-esque. You know, it's very kind of stress-inducing at that point.
Yeah, the Gradius Rebirth was not the only WiiWare game to make me swear in my TV this week. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's depressing how out of control it can get to, and there's nothing you can do about it because, you know, one of the Grey Fallows showed up and just blew it all the hell up.
Well, when you do get when the timer does run out, at least the game lets you continue at least once. That's happened to me a bunch of times. But I could not get very far into the game. I finished like the first 2 rows of puzzles, and then I don't know. My Wii was not really cooperating. I'm getting operating system error files, messages all the time now on my Wii U.
This is the equivalent of when I was trying to do Lego City Undercover and the Wii U's disc readers giving out.
Oh God,
It won't load stuff half the time. Yeah, the joys of old hardware.
Yes, I think I got to the 4th row, which it does get harder, but it doesn't really feel like it's building. It just feels harder. I don't know how to describe it. Like it's not really. It doesn't feel like a progression. Just like this is kind of the same as this one, but a little bit more difficult. I think
a little bit more convoluted. I seem to remember from where I think I got into like the 5th from my save file. I must have got to did some of the 5th row. Back when I played it, in 2009, but none of the 6th row. So, which I probably tried because, like I said, you can try them. It doesn't hold them back from you, but evidently it was too difficult.
I wonder if what I'm looking for is maybe like I would expect more mechanical differences, but really you see everything pretty much at the very start. Like in the 1st row, they've pretty much given you all of the cube types. Now you're just kind of...
You get more challenging combinations of them, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way of putting it. And I don't know, like sometimes I would run a cube and it would be a real pain in the ass, and then I'd run it again and it'd be just fine. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it
is that kind of like just domino effect. It really, the wrong move at the right time just screws up everything, and you can feel like you didn't do anything that much different. But if you don't tip over that first domino, you never go to that horrible place.
But also, I think that the pale follows are random, so you might have a run where you just don't get them, and so it's super easy.
I think the other thing that was kind of making me feel like the progression wasn't there is that so many of the stages have you start off with, okay, here's a cube, put 4 follows on it. And
it starts off so easy, right?
I do this every time.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of like 3D Picross, the first one, where it's just like you always had to get rid of the rows that had zeros.
Yeah.
Whereas in 3D Picross Round 2, it gives you the bomb, which gets rid of them all. It's because, like, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's just kind of trivial. And it kind of gets to that point with with this as well. If you can't do that bit, I mean, why are you even playing it?
Yeah, it's just free, nice plays. It's just except for like the one time I got a fallow like on the 2nd throw. I'm like, are you kidding me? God damn it! But yeah, it's. I don't know. Do we want to talk a little bit about who made it? Because it's weirdly from the people who made D2 and D.
Well, go ahead.
Keiji Eno. But what a weird progression of game design this is. Like, from these weird ass survival horror games to this.
It was like a new company for him at the time, wasn't it? So I guess it was kind of thing, kind of trying to get your feet under you kind of thing, perhaps, a small scale game. I imagine there was a fair bit of that going on around about the sort of WiiWare, XBLA, that sort of a nascent kind of digital marketplace phase of consoles.
Yeah, Nintendo only published a handful of games on WiiWare, and a lot of them are kind of like this. They're these kind of really restrictive, weird things that are trying to show off a specific thing, and we'll get to another one in a minute. But yeah, I don't know. Like, this doesn't feel particularly polished. I mean, there's not much to polish, I suppose.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, oh man, this is a platform holders game showing everybody what to do.
No.
No.
I don't know. This doesn't. It's weird, and it works for what it is. It doesn't feel like it particularly distinguishes itself in any unique way, except for the horrible like scream that I've definitely, as Greg pointed out, I've definitely heard that scream as they fall from somewhere else. There are actually a couple sound effects in this game that I heard. I'm like, I've heard that in a different Nintendo game. I can't remember what it is. And I think when I streamed it, there was one I called out because I knew immediately what it was. I'm like, I've heard that before. It was in Doshin the Giant. There is a Doshin the Giant sound effect in this. It's the scream sound. The scream sound is from Doshin. It's the sound of when people die.
Again, it kind of makes sense in the sort of the little kind of these kind of little pitiful sort of people passing away. Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know. My thought is I think Pokepal summed up the best. It's a relatively simple and relaxing game, except until it isn't. And that's a weird contrast for a game, because if you're trying to make a relaxing experience, you normally don't build in mechanics to take that away suddenly without any kind of way to restore them. Normally, if you're going for a game that's stress, that's what you're shooting for. So I can't think of another game where it alternates between those two extremes so quickly and so frequently.
I don't know. It kind of feels like, am I going to say it? Kind of feels unbalanced. Kind of feels like like it's bad game design. I don't know. Like I feel like there's too much uncertainty playing this game to know, like, yeah, like it's the lack of feedback that I mentioned earlier. I feel like I really don't know how I'm doing until I finish level.
Yeah.
And I get scored at the end.
And it doesn't really, I mean, it's the kind of game where it sort of projects like it demands a lot of accuracy, but doesn't really give you the tools to do that. Like, I found, like, the one thing that didn't get mentioned was how you can do the quick turn to see the other side of the cube. That never felt right to me. It always showed me like the other side of the cube that I didn't want to see, or it wasn't the right angle. There was always something wonky there where I was just like, that's completely useless. I still don't know where I really need to put these follows. So,
or it'd be like a diagonal to the cube surface, which doesn't help you balance it at all. It's
exactly.
Like, well, wait a minute.
You click through sort of fixed ones, don't you? I mean, because hypothetically you could have a nunchuck there and actually have a free view of the cube, I guess. But so I'm assuming it was a conscious design decision to kind of limit it to these particular views, and you got to make it work. But I think when you are dealing, especially when it's like, we're gonna put these cubes where you can only work around the edges and stuff like that, and it's asking for more precision. It's that can be a little awkward.
Yeah, and sometimes you just get it back. Like, there's no good angle, or like the cubes aren't random, like the shape of them aren't. But there's definitely some where the structure would grow down and then out, and then it would also grow out from above where it grew down originally. And so you'd end up with, like, there's only a really narrow window you can throw a follow into to hit the bottom cube, but you have to do it because you have to put one on everything. Sometimes it was like, maybe you guys should have, since you made all these by hand, I guess this was part of the challenge. But man, finding the angle that lets me throw something in here is impossible. And it's not, and if you set a dot, like you say, I want to put a follow here, and then you rotate the cube, and you put another one down and throw it, it still throws it like you hadn't rotated the cube.
Oh.
And so it just hits the cube wall instead of landing where the dot is. Because the cubes have changed, and so you end up hitting that. So it can be tough if you need to drop two, but you have to move to a certain angle to deal with one of them. So there's it can be kind of a pain. Anybody else? Any thoughts before we move on?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so I'll talk about Bonsai Barber.
Mm-hmm.
So Bonsai Barber, you play as someone who has presumably gone through a significant amount of training on cosmetology. Not cosmology, that's different altogether. Has studied all of the necessary skills to become a fantastic hairstylist, and has now moved to a town somewhere out, presumably in the English countryside, where they are going to take over for a barber who just retired.
I would let me just say that this would be a wonderful companion piece to Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom.
It could be. But presumably,
I was thinking that film with Michael J. Fox where he's a doctor. What was that?
Oh God!
Oh God!
The Secret of My Success. Or...
No. This is Doctor Something. It's Doctor Something, right?
Is it Hollywood or something?
Doc Hollywood.
Doc Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because he ends up being a doctor out in some rural little town when obviously he's the big city guy.
Yeah.
But not only did you go out to this town to become a barber and live your dream, you get there and you realize the town is inhabited entirely by talking root vegetables who are growing bushes as hair and have incredibly insane demands and are also all assholes. So pretty much your live stream is ruined for you within 5 seconds of starting the game.
There are also cherries and corn, not just root veggies.
No, but there's a lot of root veggies, and they're all still assholes. So really, this game is about don't try to live your dreams, kids, because you will be stymied by living plants who have completely unexpectable tastes and are just pieces of crap.
That message gets so old after a while. We use it so often.
It's true.
Mm.
Don't follow your dreams. You cannot live your goals. Bonsai Barber is living proof. So basically, these plants invade your shop and ask you to cut increasingly outrageous things into their hair. At some point, it got to, hey, I'm going to go on a tour of London. Please cut a bell into my bush. Yeah, I know.
I
know. It is what it is.
Ring, ring.
My favorite was the bowl cut, which was like an upside up bowl.
Yes.
Like that you cut into the hair of the veggie. Like it's just like, wow, you missed the point here, but cool.
Well, no, I mean they knew what they were, because like they'll be like, hey, I really like cowboy hats. Can you cut a cowboy hat? And I'm like, why don't you just wear a fucking cowboy hat then, asshole? But a lot of times that meant using. So you get your choice of tools. You have scissors. You have clippers. You can use a comb to try to manipulate the branches and put them where you want them to be. And you have a spray bottle to undo mistakes when you cut them, because of course they're plants. It'll grow back instantly when you spray it with water, right?
Yeah, that's
right?
kind of the best kind of justification I could see for why this is about cutting plants hairstyles.
I just thought they were just. I mean, they were just being
like,
weird.
well, if you screw it up, you could just make the hair substitute grow back with Miracle Grow or whatever else is in that bowl.
But not only do you find yourself cutting in things like cowboy hats or cutting cubes into their hair, as you start cutting things, other stuff starts to happen, because this game wasn't weird enough already. So Mr. Big Ben sent me a postcard about how much he loved visiting the Big Ben, and then came into my shop and told me how much he hates London, which was weird.
Yeah, it was weird that, wasn't it? Because he says, "Oh God, you got to cut him a bowler hat, wasn't it?"
Yeah. There's a bowler hat
before he he's like, "Oh, I'm dreading going to London. It's gonna rain and all this other stuff, so you got to cut me the bowler hat so I'm equipped to deal with it." You get a postcard afterwards, which is like, there's the Big Ben and the London Eye and the Red Arrows for some reason, I guess those airplanes.
And he says, "I'm having a biscuit and tea."
So it's like, okay, he was dreading it a bit, but he ended up having a nice time. And then when he comes back in the shop next time, it's like, yeah, it was rubbish.
So for me, there was the same day. So I have my postcard, then immediately like, yeah, it's terrible. But it was terrible. Can you cut a bell in my hair, because I was being inspired? And then as you do it, actual bells start popping up. It's going, this is, and he's actually going like, those are weird. Where are those coming from? What are they? And then if you touch them, they ring, and he goes like, oh, can you not do that? It's like, what the fuck is this game? Like, you start cutting someone. So I want to say it was this one, the radish walks in and goes like, hey, can you cut a snowman into my hair? And my first thought was, no, I can't do that. But then I do it anyway. And as you do it, it starts to snow, and she freaks out. It snows in your shop, on top of her getting in your way of cutting. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
You also got like rain clouds that can show up, and they will make the hair grow when you don't want it to.
Birds.
Yes. But you can use the scissors and kind of take it out before it reaches the veggie. It's really weird. There's also like the freaking bird, which if you use the scissors on, like it's gonna hurt it, or I don't know.
It has a name too.
It doesn't seem to do anything. Like it doesn't penalize you in any way, but what you can also do is use the paintbrush and paint the bird different colors. And when you do it, it starts whistling a different public domain like lullaby or something. It's just like, okay, and there's one for each different color.
And it also spits out hearts and stuff. The bird only shows up when Maisie is in your shop, who is this, I don't even know what she's supposed to be, but she has kind of like an animal face. And she's kind of rude. And the bird shows up, and it'll be there for all of your customers because Maisie's in the shop because she can't keep her pet at home. And sometimes when she shows up, she'll speak on behalf of the bird. The bird wants to see wants music in my hair. And you're like, what? Dude, you're talking to birds now? God damn it. See, if you don't cut the bell into her hair, she doesn't like it. So you can't get 5 stars no matter how good a job you do. So you got to cut the bell to get 5 stars.
Yeah, I can never tell what to do to get 5 stars.
So it's just a matter of just being really on point.
Yeah, and sometimes it really does seem like so kind of, you just got to, I've done it a few times where, like, I cut it as precisely as I can. I don't get 5 stars. I spray a bit again, to make it grow back, recut it. And then it really didn't really look any different than it was, but that time it was 5 stars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing about that's amusing more than anything is that the scoring system being a little bit arbitrary is kind of weird. But basically, you can just stop whenever you're good enough, at which point you shake the Wii Remote, your tools come down, you grab a hammer, and then you use the Wii Remote to bang on a gong. And you say, okay, I'm done.
It's pretty cool, though. I really don't. It's another just
favorite part.
It's completely random, just wackiness that there's a lot of in this game. But if you have been agonizingly, like, really just trying to trim tiny little bits off the edge to try and get that 5 stars without buggering it up, so you have to make it regrow again and all that, and then the 5-star comes up, I can't grab that fast enough. Get out.
The thing that's amusing about how that all plays out, though, is that it can be really tough to get the 5 stars, not because it's really pedantic about being particular, is that a lot of times you have to deal with shapes that are very top heavy, which means you have to cut a lot off the bottom. But if you do that, it's a plant. You'll cut the branch off and everything above just falls away.
Yeah, it's like
but that's what the clippers are for, though.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it is. But sometimes then it's like, okay, it seems like it's not going to give you 5 stars because you've got too many bare twigs showing.
Yes.
But some of those bare twigs are supporting leaves that are necessary to achieve the style. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to try and cut this little twig off to get the 5 stars. Oh, no, now the whole thing's falling apart.
Well, and the clippers vibrate and leave a jagged edge. So
and sometimes they go, oh, that's ticklish, and then they shake about. And,
yes.
Oh,
yeah.
But at least they warn you. You can stop.
Shake around. Yeah.
You can stop shaving, and then they wiggle, and then you resume.
Yeah. The weird thing. The strangest thing about how this game asks you to do stuff, though, is that the game, it's not the game. Normally you're going to cut with the scissors to try to cut out the shapes. The shapes superimposed on their hair, and a lot of times they're the hedge that comes out of their head,
the foliage.
Yeah. Even though it's oftentimes completely inappropriate for that particular vegetable, but you'll have to like kind of shape it around a little bit sometimes. But then the scissors themselves, it's not always clear exactly where they're gonna cut, because it's based on the intersect of the back of the scissor and the front. But the back of the scissor is actually behind their foliage, so you can't see it. So figuring out exactly where that clip's going to be could be kind of tough, especially when you're doing it at an angle. Mm-hmm. And unlike Yumi and the Cubes, which both these games are pointer Wii Remote only, unlike Yumi and the Cubes, where the pointer is being smooth through software, Bonsai Barber says, F it, we're going to give you exactly where that pointer is. And the Wii Remote pointer, not that smooth.
Well, but I mean,
depends.
it also depends on, like, I guess, like, your environment for the sensor
Yeah.
bar and stuff. I mean, I never really had a problem with this kind of thing.
Right, don't play with the sun shining in your living room.
Like infrared stuff could you really screw with it, and like, you could just have super jittery pointers,
Yes.
which I can only imagine would make this sort of thing unplayable.
Mine was fairly jittery, but in a small range. It wasn't like bouncing all over the screen. But Yumi and the Cubes, which I was usually playing immediately at the same time, or it's like in one back to the other, did use software to kind of smooth that out a little bit, which was much appreciated. Whereas in Bonsai Barber, occasionally it would jitter right when they're moving and end up cutting off a whole branch, and then it's, hey, you get to start over now. Isn't that fun? God damn it.
So the last time that I played the game, I checked the manual, and there's not a whole lot to find there. But did you guys ever do the appointments thing? You can actually schedule appointments for specific veggies and specific haircuts.
I did look at the
Okay,
calendar, but I didn't do that.
Okay, so I guess like if you're trying to get 5 stars, or like I don't know, if you perfect a particular haircut, I think that it shows up in your book of haircuts with these blue stars on them. So I guess if there's something in particular you want to perfect, that's how you do it. You schedule appointments, and because the game is using the week clock to give you like 5 appointments a day or 5 clients a day, and then you have to stop playing and you have to pick up the game again the next day. I guess these appointments are real time. Like you're maybe not like down to the hour, but like I guess you could schedule an appointment for like Friday or whatever.
And they have to remember to boot it up that day too.
Yeah, it's a little bit of Animal Crossing.
I mean, clearly it's, there's not a huge amount of meat on the bones in this game. It's a kind of amusing like play component of being a barber or whatever. But they're just trying to stretch the content out to a fair degree. So I played 6 different days. And we got that amounted to about 3 hours, I think, of playtime.
Yeah, it's about the same.
And the biggest thing that happened in the back end of that time was the fact that all of a sudden everybody gets it into their head to make you cut the style with them upside down.
Yes.
So it changes the dynamic that we talked about in terms of, the twigs supporting the actual, what makes up the style. And, we're using the clippers, up high, and then using the scissors down low and all that kind of. So, yeah, that was, was something that they throw in there to try and make, it's not supposed to make it that much harder, but just to make it a little different.
See, you get an item that lets you flip people around if you want. One of the characters gives it to you if you get a good enough haircut on them, and it's just there. And it's like, I want to cut everybody's hair upside down now. Click. There you go. One of the weirder things that happened is I missed a day, and then when I came back because I missed a day, I guess the shop was full of bees. There's just a swarm of bees flying over the screen, and all the animal or the plants are like, "Oh, what's with all these bees? Can you do something about these bees?" And the answer was apparently you spray them with the water bottle and they go away. But I didn't know that. So they're just getting in the way of you trying to cut hair. And it's like, what is happening right now? This is kind of WarioWare-y sometimes, where it's just like, I don't know, random shit's gonna happen now. There you go. Have fun with that. It's goofy. This game is really just goofy a lot of the time. And not always to its positive, but the best stuff about this game is how dumb it gets and how bizarre stuff just seems to happen to the poor barber who just wanted to cut people's hair and now lives in a hell populated entirely by sentient plants. A banana who comes in and really wants you to cut. What do you want to cut into his hair? Which, first off, he's a banana. Secondly, was it a top hat? It might have been a top hat. But it's like, what the fuck is going on right now?
Yeah. I'm surprised a kid from Kid and Play didn't have a hand in this game.
There you go. You can cut that haircut in.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the... Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, I think you're going to mention the pedigree of the developer.
Yeah. This was made by Tsunami Limited, so that they're some former Rare people. I'm trying to get the exact name of the crew involved, but they left Rare right before Perfect Dark came out. Martin Hollis specifically, but a few other people went with them. So a lot of people went from the GoldenEye team went to Free Radical, but Hollis and co. went to form Tsunami, which didn't really have much of an illustrious career. They were around for about 10 years, but they didn't really release that much. And this is pretty much their biggest game that they released, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
There was
I don't know, like, was there anything like it when it came out? Because I know that following that, like, now on iPad, you can't hit the App Store without finding, like, a game where you extract teeth from Elsa, or give a haircut to Elsa, or shave Elsa.
But see, the commonality you're missing here is Miss Elsa.
Right, but like there's a lot of these games that are
Pregnant
basically
Elsa
like
foot pedicure. Yeah, it's great.
They're very similar to this.
Dentistry genre, right?
But I kind of feel like, I don't know, like maybe Tsunami started this.
By the way, the episode title as of right now is Pregnant Elsa Foot Pedicure, so you guys better come up with something good.
Anyway, like I feel like I don't know, like it kind of hit something that would become popular later.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, you're right. And
the daily play component of it is kind of something that, I mean, at the time, daily play was something that Nintendo was doing with a number of their casual games, and so, the brain training daily thing. I think Picross DS had like a daily mode, like it was something they were trying to sort of build in to a number of things, like to have a little high score or some sort of check-in thing, to kind of keep people coming back to something. And I guess this kind of worked in that way to some extent. But yeah, with mobile and free to play or free to start and all that kind of stuff, and it got rationing your time and all that. It was maybe a little bit like just not quite the right platform, on Wii for this kind of idea.
Yeah, it was also $10, which seems pretty steep for what this game is.
Yeah, you mean the Cubes was 2 as well, I believe.
It was. Yeah, they're both 10. But like that felt more substantial than this. Because here's the thing: once you've cleared out all your appointments for the day, all you can do is practice on the non-sentient plant that's sitting on your table.
Yes.
Which. And
you only have like 5 appointments in a day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
which isn't a whole lot, like unless you want to just screw with the Wii clock.
Yeah.
But even then, like that's kind of an inconvenience.
And you're not being an honest barber at that point. I mean, come on.
No, yeah, I mean, you were granted you were sold a bill of goods, including getting to take over a barbershop, only to find you're actually going to become a gardener for sentient, sadistic plants.
You gotta take the high road,
Yeah, I mean, look. He wants you to cut a boat into his hair. It doesn't matter that he is actually a celery. You need to do it.
So you're saying that you would be making lemonade out of lemons?
Well, I don't think there are any lemons in this game,
I don't
unfortunately. Know. I think I've met the whole cast, John. I appreciate what you're trying here, but I don't think it's working out for you.
That's pretty good. It's a pretty good attempt, though, right?
It was good. I'll give you an 8.5 out of 10.
Thanks. They call me Mr. 8.5.
Hasn't he got enough of those already? And he's obviously got them to throw around for any old FPS that comes asking.
Any old first-person shooter, huh? Yeah.
The best part about this game is not playing it. It's when the game decides it wants to screw with you. And it's like, I'm going to do something weird now. And now it's snowing and Christmassy music's going to play. And even the cherries whose shrubbery you're cutting, which again, cherries don't have that, are like, what's happening? Make this stop. And you're like, I can't. Like, you and me are in this together.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think a little bit about Snipperclips, which is another like British developed game that Nintendo kind of picked up. But obviously in this case for Switch, and it's just, there's a little bit of that in there naturally in terms of those challenges in Snipper Clips where it's just about making a shape. But it really just feels like much more of like, okay, how would we make a substantial game out of this idea? Well, kind of making the shape is just kind of the first phase, and then it's like, actually, being able to solve puzzles, having, making these shapes and the co-op element and all that. It's kind of like if you took this as in the conceptual phase and then said, well, just cutting shapes isn't enough. We need to go further and do something with those shapes, and then what would you do? And then this is kind of like if you stopped much earlier and did something much more simple and kind of relying on the kind of the goofiness to help kind of sell it.
Yeah.
So you guys got further than I did into the quote-unquote story. Is there some sort of denouement for any of these characters or what?
I mean, they do kind of have, each one of them kind of has progression. Like, they talk about the stuff that's happened in the past. But, like, I don't feel like I'm seeing the celery character really evolve as a person. No.
You get postcards, you get other gifts from them, I guess, for doing well.
But mostly it's built so that you keep playing forever. Like it's not really like a game where you reach the end.
I think there probably is an end insofar as they stopped writing dialogue. But it may just loop around again for all.
But I mean, like you can look at the credits just in the appointment book. So
right, I did that. So I was like, okay, I'm done with the game. I saw the credits.
There's a plant, and I can't remember which one it is that hits on you, and I'm not comfortable with this.
Wow. But like playing the game, I was just reminded of Let's Catch, which
yep.
Like has you just throw a ball and anyway play catch with different characters, and there's a build up and there's different characters you talk to, and you kind of share a moment with each of them, and there's like kind of an escalating story until at some point you're on the moon throwing a ball with an alien, and you're answering basically like, what is it to be human, and what is love, and everything.
No,
what is friendship?
I wasn't expecting Let's Catch to turn into Blade Runner, but
yeah, basically. But like, so that's I thought like that's really a game that I liked when I played it originally, but I find that it hasn't aged all that well because it uses motion controls, and the Wii's original motion controls are not so great to go back to, and I find that I can't really throw the ball anymore. I used to be able to do it, but now I find the controller unresponsive. But the pointer gameplay I find ages much better. So I kind of wish that you had that sort of story progression in Bonsai Barber, that you had some, I don't know, that these veggies confided in you, their barber.
I know.
That somewhere.
I know my sister here, the other Cherry, and I look like we get along, but I just want to kill her. Like,
right? Yeah.
Help me.
Tell me everything.
It's okay. Let's
also, she's sitting right there.
Yeah, she's right. She's attached to me, and if we get separated, we'll die. So, maybe she can just ignore us for a little while. It's like, good God.
But yeah, instead of like kind of a more traditional story progression, or it just feels like they were kind of trying to get you to, like, they were trying to pad out the length. They had an idea for gameplay, but they didn't try to make that much of a game out of it. A traditional game, I mean.
Yeah, it's a toy. I mean, that's what this game is a toy.
Yeah.
All right, so do we want to do a little compare and contrast here? Because there's some interesting parallels. These are pointer-focused, very, very simple Nintendo-published games with some kind of developer pedigree that came out pretty close to one another, about a year apart, I think. I mean, I think certainly from a presentation standpoint, there's more going on in Bonsai Barber because it's
more polished.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated mechanically.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't play as well.
No, probably not. It's much simpler. It seems it's like a mini game.
Yes.
It really, you know what it feels like to me? It feels like a mini game it feels like one of the mini games that's in like Pokemon Sun or Moon or something like that. Like even more stripped down for some reason. Yeah, like something like that.
Or I was thinking that this would have been like something you would see in the toy room in like WarioWare Touched.
Yeah, or Smooth Moves or something like that.
Yeah, like when you get things like the water chicken,
and
you could just cause it to tap forever. Like this is almost at that level, but it's $10.
Yeah,
it's like that's kind of an insane price for this in retrospect.
It really is. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, I gotta spend $10 on this, and like there's like other games that I actually would spend $10 on. I mean, I did spend $10 on this, but I felt taken. I'll say that much.
Well, we sacrifice for you, dear listener.
Yep, we do.
You know how many games where you play the dentist or the barber I can get for free on iPad? Come on.
Right.
I'm just imagining John sparking a whole new string of Taken movies where he's just trying to take revenge on the people that made him pay $10 for Bonsai Barber.
Yeah, the first two are the creators of this and the creators of
I've got a very specific set of budgetary restrictions and you fuck those up.
God damn it. If you really want to go after some WiiWare devs, if you want us to go after some WiiWare devs, we're still open to doing a couple more of these.
Yeah, March 26th is the end date, I think, for getting Taken. That's
right.
In terms of when you can actually, because the store is going to be open for like a whole year after that. But of course,
you can't put currency on.
If you can't add credit to it, you're not going to be able to get anything of it.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about maybe doing one of the My Life games. One of the Square Enix My Life as a blank. And we're already on the hook for Alien Cross Returns. But, I kind of like doing these smaller games because a lot of these are going to kind of be forgotten. Guillaume mentioned Let's Catch. Like something in that kind of space where it's weird and it's got some kind of unique thing. I was planning on pitching these guys onto Marisander, but now I'm doing it on the air because now I've forced my hand on it. So now they have to at least acknowledge that it was mentioned.
It's a great game. But it's also $10, and you might also feel taken.
Well, I mean, that's maybe that's when we do our final thoughts on the WiiWare service. Maybe that's the summary is like, man, it was easy to get taken, huh? Because there's no way. So if these games were coming out now, let's say accounting for 10 years time passing in terms of how they're polished and put together, these two specifically, they wouldn't be $10. They'd sell for like $5, to be honest. Somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe even less. Maybe Bonsai Barber is
free to play or free to start.
Yeah. But that just wasn't something they did then, I guess.
Well, it was within first a couple of years ago of the service, so it was a new kind of venture for them, and I guess they didn't really, maybe they weren't sure exactly kind of what would fly and what wouldn't at the time, and they also had the kind of existing ecosystem for a couple of years of Virtual Console preceding it, which is like, okay, so this whole like, well, you could get much more substantial games for like $8 that were Super Nintendo games, RPGs that would last you many, many hours and were really involved, and maybe some of the best games ever. But they're old; these are new, so kind of it was that they, said before they clearly felt that those were not just sort of separate sections on the shop. They were kind of competing for people's money and stuff. So I guess that psychology, must have entered into it. Whereas I don't think it would in the same way today.
So your thought is that the Virtual Console may have set kind of a superficial floor on the price of these new games?
Might have done, yeah. Just in terms of this kind of feeling of like, oh well, if we're charging $8 for games that came out at that time, 15 years ago or whatever. Maybe we can get away for charging, $10 for some of this stuff. And of course, with DSi, which came a little bit later, they had these kind of predefined slots for pricing, didn't they?
Yeah.
There was no like scale. Like at least with WiiWare, it was like, well, it could be 600, 700, 800. Whereas it with DSi, was it 200, 500? Like it was only like 4 different prices anything could possibly be.
Well, I mean, it's granted. So, Bonsai Barber obviously is a much more valuable game than, say, Secret of Mana. I mean, it came out a whole 15 years later. It must be at least $3 better.
It's got pointer tech in it. I mean, it's just way more advanced. So
That's
obviously,
true.
It's worth more money.
It's obviously worth $2 more, 15 years of time. But I think maybe the pricing here, especially because these are Nintendo published, so we can expressly say this is Nintendo's decision.
Oh yeah, but although the art style stuff was cheaper and better value for money in most cases. Something like Orbion was much more. It was going to give you a lot better bang for your buck, and you paid less for it. But most of those were games that already existed because they were GBA bit generations,
right?
And then a couple were completely original for like Cubello and Rotozoa.
So we're saying in terms of what games are better than others, we're saying it's Pentatentacle, Secret of Mana, Bonsai Barber. That's the order of quality.
Yeah, it's a pretty good ranking.
We are creating a transitive ranking of everything on the Wii Shop channel, and we've only got about 1,000 titles to go. I'm sure we'll get there before the end of this episode.
This is science. We are doing science right now. I strongly encourage, and I've done it on stream twice now. I strongly encourage just going into the Wii Shop channel, even if you're not planning on buying anything, and just reading what came out, because it's baffling and amazing, and like there's stuff in there I've never heard of. It's fantastic, and these two, I could just cross them off the list forever, because this is the ceiling until I find a $12 game, and then we know we found something better.
Strong words from James Jones, everybody.
It's purely monetary decision.
Money talks.
But
I guess that means you can decide how good you think Final Fantasy My Life as a King is.
It's true. I can just tell you, but based on its price, this is a $12 good game, but maybe it becomes a $15 good game if you want it to.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, the thing is, with the changes in the Canadian money value, prices for WiiWare have actually gone up for me, so I actually paid closer to $15.
They're getting better then. That means those games are getting better as you play them.
That's it. Right. It's a slow burn.
The game gets better as your currency gets worse. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Nice.
It's pure economics.
Yeah. It's a sliding scale, all right. It's a slippery slope. Also,
it's an upside to the referendum after all.
I thought you were going to go, that's a sliding slope, at which point I was going to just put the laptop on the ground and walk away. It is weird, though. Like, Nintendo is expressly responsible for the pricing of these two games. And you're right. They made that explicit calculus. These are as good as N64 games. Period.
Yep.
And that was, their calculus almost certainly was, it's newer, therefore it must be more. Which I think probably was the detriment of both of these games. That price of entry, when we'd already picked the games, I was like, shit, is it safe to go email those guys and go change plans, boys? These are expensive. Because between the two, there ain't $20 worth of content here.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Certainly by today's kind of reckoning, it's hard to feel that way. But and also I think the biggest problem it was kind of alluded to as well is there was a kind of, it was predicated on a novelty factor about not just there's still some sort of novelty factor in terms of the Wii and the pointer and what you could do with it. But then just these original downloadable games that would just sit on your system and there's not a disc or anything like that was a sort of a novelty then. Which obviously is just with so a million miles away from that now, where you can, preload games that are, tens of gigs in size, but and just play it at midnight when it comes out a full retail release. I mean, it's it's
totally you could preload games a month before they come out, because we've reached the point now where I need to download this 30 days before it unlocks. Or was it Metal Gear? You can download Metal Gear, whatever that new one is.
Survive.
Yeah, but you can't play it because the servers aren't online. Yeah, we should go back to the era where it was a novelty. That was a lot easier.
Well, it was actually, I don't know, I really loved that era. Like, I was much less discriminating in my purchases, but there was a lot of, that's like got both good and bad
Guillaume's
sides
Summer of
to
Love.
It was, I don't know, like, it was just, there was a lot of interesting experimentation going on. I was curious, all right?
Jeez, you're gonna feel really silly if he's actually like getting murdered or something, Batman.
Summer of Love.
Just on the inside with knives made of your words.
But like I don't know, like I've got good memories of WiiWare, and I'm looking at the games that are available today, and I think that there's a little bit less interesting experimentation going on, a lot more procedural generation, a whole lot more, a whole lot more Metroidvanias, which at some point I thought was something I wanted, but...
Certain genres have kind of become in vogue, haven't they? And then you get well served in those areas, and you still get, I think, the fact that you've got the sort of robust indie scene that you have today, you still get spins on those things that are, refreshing and whatnot. But, again, it just, I think there was a bit of a need to be more experimental with WiiWare, just from the point of view that the size constraint was so severe.
Yeah.
In terms of just breadth of content or depth or however you want to look at it, you weren't going to be able to deliver something that satisfying unless it was extremely sort of simple visually, maybe. It was kind of it was this sort of challenge almost to a lot of developers. What can you do with this kind of restraint, and that does bring out creativity a lot of times, and experimentation. In terms of things that are going to stand the test of time, or be really kind of persistently engaging experiences, less likely.
Yeah, and I think you can see some of the size limitations on both of these games and how they sort of, like a great example is that even stuff like the images in Bonsai Barber. I know the Wii was an SD system, but like that front logo is just bad, and some of the audio usage here is not great, and like they're just jamming for space at some point. But man, I don't know. That one's gonna rub me the wrong way for a while, I think. I'll be curious as we play more of these to see, maybe we get to some that are more substantial, and we start to see like how they made a bigger game on the WiiWare service. Although it's not like these were particularly early. I mean, Bonsai Barber's 2009.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, so like I said, it was the second year of the platform.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. It's Alien Crush next week. That's a back to 2008 game, where you could play pinball inside guts.
Yep.
So look forward to that, I guess. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for our WiiWare Retroactive Part A and B. Next week we'll do some Alien Crush, and we'll probably get some emails. So you could send us emails with questions or comments or alien guts, I guess, to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Please don't ask about Guillaume's Summer of Love experimentation phase. I don't want to know.
He was curious, for the record. Just remember that, folks.
Mm-hmm. He was canonically curious, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need to know that much more. But you can ask us about Nintendo stuff. We like that. You can do that. Again, it's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. And also you can post your comments about Alien Crush Returns in the talkback thread at the Nintendo World Report forums. Greg, do we have a Wii retrospective game, and do we have music?
Well, yeah, so we had a request that came in for music when we first started kind of talking about what WiiWare games we might look at, and I doubt we will be looking at this particular one because it did get a sort of another go round on PC about a year after its WiiWare release, but originally this came out at a similar time to the games that we discussed today. This is Nick's Quest, Kindred Spirits, which is kind of a Greek-themed kind of game that came out, like I said, back in 2009 originally on WiiWare. It got pretty well received at the time, I remember. I didn't get around to it, but I remember Johnny spoke about it, and Ben, who requested a song from it, also has memories of Johnny speaking about this particular WiiWare game 9 years ago. So memory is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I do wonder what will survive in my brain when I'm very old. It'll probably be stuff like this rather than like important things. But the soundtrack though is pretty. To me, it seems pretty impressive considering the aforementioned constraints on size, and so. Ben requested the song Icarus, which gives you sort of a flavour of the atmosphere that this game was going for. And because I was kind of pleasantly surprised, having not played it before, you kind of wonder what it's going to be like going back to, when it was 40 megabytes. I hope everyone else can enjoy this too.
For reference, that's about 2 episodes of the show, and then some space left that had to fill somehow. So, it was 2.5 episodes of this show. So, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.